I want to talk about two things. Number one is the input side, and number two is the output side. The input side is how and why I read 3 books a day, 5 days a week, about 40,000 total books in my professional career. And then the output side is how I'm and why I'm writing 30 books at the same time in the next 3 months. Okay, first let's look at the input side. Um, when I was a freshman at MIT, I had a hard time the first semester and was lower class average grades midway through the semester than the other students. I knew I had trouble. But a guy, Bill Harris, at Thanksgiving holiday, who I talked to at home, an old high school friend, told me that I ought to be buying the Stanford Harvard books for my MIT courses, as well as the MIT recommended books, and that many of the things badly explained by the MIT book would be well explained by the others. And he was absolutely right. And as soon as I tried that, and so every year I got the Stanford Harvard books for whatever MIT courses I was taking and read all three instead of just one. So I got up to about reading, I think MIT required 5 books a week was the basic rate of reading there. And that was easy. And I had already done that in high school. So I did that. And, but then I got to sophomore year wanting to do better than that because I was doing extra reading because of the Stanford Harvard books for each course. So I ended up at about 2 books a day somewhere in sophomore year. And I can remember a struggle to actually keep that consistent and going below 2 books and criticizing myself and worrying about it and struggling to do extra books on the weekend to catch up. And but I eventually got to 2 books a day. Then by the time I graduated, I was at 3 books a day, 5 days a week. And I was making detailed models and notes on 3 key chapters of each book. And this would be maybe 10 pages of notes per key chapter and 7 pages to 10 pages of notes. So let's do 7 times 3 is 21 pages per book, times 3 is 60 pages a day, times 5 is 300 pages. So I was writing a book a week by the time I graduated from MIT, and I knew it. But I didn't turn it into a book because I didn't have a sense of audience. My own brain wasn't organized. And I didn't have priorities. I didn't have enough values and know enough about me and the world, about what the world needed and what I needed to. And I didn't have confidence to write a book. I wrote a book for myself sophomore year called Structural Cognition, based on what I had learned at MIT about who the smartest people were and what made them smarter than me. And but that was for my own personal capturing of key research results, and so I could remember them and use them in later years. That wasn't for other people. That was a book for me. Um, now, uh, now it's 40 years later. I'm reading 3 books a day, precisely 5 days a week. I'm making 5 models for 5 chapters for each book, which is about 35 pages per book. Times 3 is 100 pages a day. Times 5 is 500 pages a week instead of 300 pages a week. So still about a book a week. Well, a more serious book, a little heftier book. Now that's just an input habit. And because those 500 pages of notes often now turn into books that I write, inputs for books that I write, I read a lot, and I'm motivated to read a lot because I sell the outputs of my reading. And I think school systems do a great deal of harm by not showing the connection between inputting and outputting. And they have this stupid idea of putting ideas into brains and sort of leaving them there, and like that's education. When the interface into brains is terribly bad and slow and narrow, and when the indexing of to find what you put into your brain makes it very hard to find whatever you put there a year ago. A really stupid idea from school. So if they could get the people a lot more excited about reading and inputting if they told them you could sell the outputs, and then here's how to turn your inputs into interesting models that other people can apply outputs. But they don't teach that at all. Now, let's go to my output side. My output side is writing 30 books at the same time, which is what I'm doing right now as I give you this video. And I've so many people ask me about it that I've decided to just put it here and tell them to go to YouTube and look at it. Why do I write 30 books at a time? Because I have that many topics I'm really, really interested in at the moment. And my interest means competent, and the world needs it at the time, and I'm competent to write it at the time, and I've got enough prior stuff that I know my quality will amaze people because I've already done similar ideas in conference presentations, and the audiences were amazed there. So what do I do? How do I do that? I write, when I first began writing, I didn't use detailed outlines. And I would get improv a little, and I'd get insights when I'm writing a topic and expatiate a little bit. And it ended up being a spaghetti-like mess. and then I have to reorganize everything afterwards, and then that requires a lot of rewriting. So I ended up writing the whole book twice when I wasn't organized. I stopped doing that 15 years ago, and I started writing only after I spend weeks perfecting a 2,500 to 7,000 point outline for each book. I know the main point of every paragraph before I start writing the book, and the outline I keep with me for weeks or months until I no longer hate major parts of the outline, and that's the criteria. I'm a very critical person of my own work, and I absolutely abhor repeating what you can find on the web or other people already. Like, Christensen at Harvard would be the example of humiliating dog-like failure for me. If anything in the ballpark of what he's ever written disgusts me, and it's humiliating and embarrassing for me to even know that he publishes books and that people buy them. If you're at that level, then I'm not a writer for you, because I'm interested in a whole higher level of people that he deals with. So that's the bottom. That's what total failure looks like. That's what rewriting Intel and Microsoft history as if it's a new theory 30 years later looks like. I'm not in that ballpark of rewording ancient history as if it's a new theory by me. I have higher standards than that, a lot higher standards than that, and I hope you do too. So what do? I have detailed outlines. So I made the 30 list of 30 topics I wanted to write. I went down the list, found 8 of them I don't have detailed outlines for, so I can't start writing them right now. The other 22 I do have detailed outlines for. They need some updating and some improving. So I spent about a month last month, in May of 2012, sprucing up the 22 outlines to make really good outlines for each book. That, generally 50-page long outlines of what should be written, making sure the order and the naming of points is perfect throughout the 50 pages of the outline. And then I just start at point 1 and just run to the end. And the nice thing is I can be, because it's so detailed, 50 pages of 50 points each, typically, that I can be interrupted at any given point, walk out and do something for an hour, come back and sit right down and go right back to that point or the next point. So it makes very interruptible writing. And then the thing is to execute each point purely and perfectly as itself, rather than to elaborate or expatiate or get the spaghetti-like. And I find that discipline of 2,500 points in a row, where you perfectly try to define and express to the audience that one point and why it's worth me wasting your time hearing or writing or reading. That doing that 2,500 times in a row is a thrilling discipline of thinking and writing and connecting to your audience, much better than struggling with your own lack of organization of what you think. So I don't struggle with organization at all. It's all organized before I even write one word in the book. And it's well named before I write one word. Now, I get a lot of insights that occur to me while I'm writing, and the reader sees those in the pages. But that's all extra stuff. You see that that next sentence could actually be a whole nother book. And I realize that too. And I, put little stars by it to say, go back and turn that into the next book to write a year from now. So I did about last week 700 pages, I believe, 780 pages last week. About 70, 80 pages a day, a couple of days, 100 pages, in about 3 hours a day. So that's fast typing, but I do type very fast. I've been practicing for years. But the key is that I'm so well organized and operating on such detailed outlines that my generation is just this wonderful discipline of just communicate the next point well to the audience. Why is this worth their time? How is this going to change, be different than anything they're reading on the web or hearing from their friends or getting from stupid guys like Christensen at Harvard? How is this going to be amazing compared to that low-level drivel that they're living in right now? For each point that I deliver. And I really require of each point. And if I find some of my points are not surprising to people I show them to, I stop writing them. I am not interested in repeating what you've already heard at all. I want to be way above Christensen. I mean, hundreds of times better than what he does. And he's just a Harvard professor who makes a lot of money, and the money has corrupted him totally. And his books are silly, and the CEOs who get insights from his books must be brain dead. So I don't operate at that level of vulgar, scuzzy chasing of money. I'm going to be dead soon, and you can't take the money with you, and you have to be clear what you can leave on the world. And you have to leave something that rings in the hearts of people. And popular songs from 100 years ago don't last, because we don't. How many popular songs from 100 years ago did you sing this week? 0. Because that doesn't last. That doesn't ring in the heart. But there are ideas from Darwin that still ring in our hearts. There are ideas from Nietzsche, ideas from Marx, ideas from Newton, ideas from Plato that still ring in people's hearts.